Welcome to Rooted and Unwavering, a podcast and radio show which features leaders from all walks of life in conversations about courageous connectedness. How do we stay connected to our best selves, especially when we are challenged? What becomes possible when we truly stay committed to our own and others' greatness, also when we don't feel it? Join host Hylke Faber, transformational coach, facilitator, and award-winning author of Taming Your Crocodiles, and his guests as they explore leadership greatness in today's episode of Rooted and Unwavering.
Well, hello, welcome to Rooted and Unwavering, broadcasting live today from Kirkland, Washington, and also Tampa, Florida. I'm here today with Erwin Visser, who is a senior leader in Microsoft and also a recent summiteer, that's a word, of Mount Everest. Erwin, so happy to have you here today. How are you today?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Hylke. I'm doing well. Very interested in this conversation, and thanks for having me. Slightly nervous, but let's really happy to be here and looking forward.
Well, I'm delighted. When I noticed that you had climbed first Mount Rainier with your 3 children, and then I saw your pictures of Mount Everest, I was first sort of thinking that I was dreaming. It's like, no, that can't be true. And then I was looking at it more. It's like, no, this is true. So we're going to hear more about Erwin Visser in a moment. Before we do so, I'm going to do a little introduction, as we always start these podcasts with a Rooted and Unwavering podcast, to center us in the purpose of this work and Rooted and Unwavering. So Rooted and Unwavering is a series of conversations with senior leaders that basically are designed to help us remind what is important to us, because it's so easy to get distracted, I find, to things that are in our minds, that are happening in our lives, that may draw our attention, that we get attached to, you could say, but that pull us away from what's truly important to us, that is truly something that when we look back at it later, say, yeah, that's really what life was about. That was important to me to be grounded in. Those were my deepest values. And this is not a static thing that we're talking about here. Like what is my true self connecting to what's most important to me? This is something that is a dynamic exploration, a dynamic journey, you could say. And what I find is I learn from everyone I meet in my life about what's important. I have ideas of it myself. And then when I meet people, my sense of the essence of what this life is about and what leadership is about always expands when I speak to somebody else. And so that's the intent for the conversation for today as well. And so today we're going to expand, at least I hope you will, and I will certainly expand my awareness of what's truly important and what life and leadership is about by listening to Erwin Visser's story. And it's funny, I'm just realizing I'm saying your name, Erwin, in English, while we're both from the same country, the Netherlands, where you were born, where I would say Erwin Visser, which is probably more the way your parents and your friends growing up would say it. Erwin was born in the Netherlands. He started his career way back when and has been working with Microsoft for 20 plus years. He started off in the Dutch subsidiary of Microsoft and was responsible there for marketing and other things as well, and then moved to headquarters in Microsoft about 18 years ago in the Redmond area, and quickly rose through the ranks there. Was in charge of marketing again, and evolved into a senior leader in partner operations, really operating and activating the partner network for Microsoft, especially in the Windows world initially, and later also more broadly. And that's also what he's doing today. He's actually a partner and a general manager in Microsoft. It's a very senior position that people really want to reach in their career. So it's something to celebrate, and so I'm very happy to celebrate that with him. And besides that, Erwin is a very rounded individual, like almost like a Renaissance man. He's a father to 5 children. He has many hobbies, including scuba diving, being out in nature. He told me that the mountains are his preferred habitat. He loves mountain climbing, skiing, cycling, and travel. And in 2023, this year, he was standing on the summit of the tallest mountain of our planet, Mount Everest. And 2 years prior, he did a family climb with his three oldest children of Mount Rainier, which I almost can see from my window here in Kirkland, Kirkland, Washington. So he says that sharing his passion for travel and adventure with his children is his biggest joy. So please join me in welcoming Erwin Visser to this podcast, this episode of Rooted and Unwavering, where we help connect leaders connect more deeply to their innate potential. So Erwin, jumping in with like a big question, which is tell me about how you've learned about connectedness in your life, connecting to what's truly important to you. You've been around for a couple decades. So what have you noticed?
Yeah, that's a great question, and we're going to dive immediately in, Hylke. Is that I think I had to learn that during my years. If I reflect, is that it's connectiveness was not something that I don't think I really understood or was a concept for me probably till my early 30s or something like that. Because my earlier life was a lot about exploring. I think trying to understand what was potential and what was possible, and not really having any focus of and having a real understanding what was important to me. And I think that's certainly now for the last years that has significantly improved. It has changed for me, where I think being connected to yourself, what drives you, what are the goals in life, kind of trying to figure out who you want to be and try to be then the best person in that vision. But also connecting with family, with my team and my organization, and being as authentic as possible you can be. Yeah, that has been a journey for me, to be honest.
Yes. Well, thank you for sharing the honesty about your journey. I can relate to this. This is not something that we're taught, at least most of us aren't taught in school, saying, hey, think about what's truly important to you. Often we're taught, you copy me on this little path that I'm on, this path that I'm on, and that will be success. And often there's an awareness that happens, and people say, oh, wait, hold on a second. Who am I? What is this thing about that I am? And what am I going to do with this life, this energy? And when I read about you, when I hear you talk, I hear that gradual dawning, you could say, of that insight.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, yeah, this could be more of what makes me tick. So say a bit more about your early years and also about your transition to the United States as a fellow immigrant. I'm curious about what made you leave a country that is so well organized and so comfortable in so many ways.
Yeah. I have to say that my trip my adventure to the US was supposed to be like a 2-3 year adventure, and then it got extended just because I really felt like balanced and really enjoyed living in the US, to be honest. So that kind of extended it. Yeah. My journey is to start with is that I grew up in a really loving family. Like I had a great youth, but it was my father. He started working when he was 15 years old. So he was from 35. So he went through the Second World War as a child, and was really I would say impacted by that, which you cannot imagine to go through an experience like that. So my family we were not poor, right? We had food, we had a roof, but we were not absolutely had no financial means. Like we didn't have a car. We never traveled to outside the Netherlands, which is a small country, as you know. And so for me, it's I was lucky in that I had the ability to learn well, did well at school. I was especially good in math and science, and so I was able to go to college, and I was the first in my family, like ever, to go to college. Not just my little family, but also a lot of the family around it, and so that for me that became like what I try to say, like a discovery and exploration, because I it was trying to understand like what is possible, and you your growth was, and my personal growth was so accelerated, and there were doors got opened that I never knew even existed. And when you start working then with like an academic degree, and you get a job at Microsoft, and you start to travel, and so that was for me like it's almost like feeling like an Alice in Wonderland a little bit. You go into worlds that you have never seen previously in your life. Your parents have never experienced, and your social world has never experienced that world before. And so you're kind of like adventuring in new worlds, and yeah, that's how I think. And why I made the statement is that connectiveness was not really like there, because it was just like, yeah, again, Alice in Wonderland, like trying to understand what my potential was, how I could explore it, and not so much thinking through like what are my personal goals, or what is my authentic self in that exploration.
Yes, I understand that. I want to just come back for a moment to the experience of your dad going to the Second World War, and you, him being shaped by that, and then the gifts that he gave to you that helped you to basically build on that. Can you say more about that transition from father to son? Because basically, I'm thinking about like him doing his best growing up in that time, which was a really hard time in the
Yeah,
Netherlands. I just can imagine, like he was grown. He was born in 36, I think you said.
35. Yeah,
35. So he was 5 years old when the Second World
yeah,
started. The Second World War started, and 10 years when it ended. And you said he started working in his mid-teens.
yeah.
So in the 50s, when the Netherlands was in a rebuilding time, what gifts have you taken from him, or what learnings did you take from him, from his journey?
Yeah, it's my biggest takeaway is kind of carpe diem. Enjoy every day and enjoy your potential. It's a sad story. Is that my father started working as a 14-year-old. Uh, he hated his job. Like the only thing I remember from my father was that he hated his work, hated his job. He had this dream making it to 40 years at the company, because then he could like early retire. And uh, he died a month after he hit that milestone.
Oh, wow. Wow. Let's pause with that for a second. He died a month after uh, he retired. So after
Yeah,
that milestone, he worked towards his entire life. So
yes,
yeah, how did that impact you?
yeah, gigantically. Um,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, um, I think it's uh, having a parent die early. I think I was 21 or so, or 22. yeah, it's just a big shock.
Big shock.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that it was super impactful for me because it put this on myself on the path that how important it was to, first of all, it's like really leverage your potential, leverage the opportunities you have. and I think one of the frustrations of my father was that he was a very intelligent man, and he had a very like low level job. So a very low level job at an insurance company that he did for 40 years. But he was, my assessment is that he had significantly higher potential than that, but he never finished high school. So he just started working and tried to create a career out of it. And But yeah, for me, the most important thing was like, hey, two things. Is like, one is that it's a clear clear signal that you don't control life. You don't, and like nobody knows if you live tomorrow. Like, to be honest, nobody has 100% agreed that you wake up tomorrow morning. So
Right.
so you really ensure that you enjoy every day, enjoy life, but also that you try to just the potential that you have, that you create. And this is the idea. It's like, hey, don't let fear stand in the way of your dreams. Is
Yeah.
that you really need to be brave and take steps to really use the potential you have.
Yes.
and and that's I don't think I had as a kid that braveness. But that was at that moment, that was something like, hey, if you don't do it now, you don't know if you get a second chance, and so you have to start jumping into adventures or career steps or decisions, because you don't really know if you get a second chance, and maybe this is the moment. And also, it's like, whatever you can lose, it's your most of the decisions we make in our lives doesn't are not life and death situations,
No.
right? And then Everest may be a different situation. We're going to talk about it, I assume, but and that's one of my it may be one of my weird passions for mountain climbing. But hey, you come to the realization, and certainly when you start mountain climbing, where like, if you like, bad decisions and mistakes can be a life or death situation, you start to become more comfortable in jumping in the rest of your life, because you start to realize that, like, the impact of bad decisions, or it's never that level. It's always something you probably can manage.
Right. 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 So there's the whole host of learnings that I'm hearing in your story about your dad's passing, that it spurred in you a sense of, I must capture my potential. I must capture my potential. That was such a gift that your dad left you. If I hear that from you now, and I think a gift to me and to all of us that are listening, we must capture our potential, because we don't know what's going to happen today, and to sit here waiting for some imagined future that might literally never come because we might be dead, literally,
Yeah.
is it's a rude awakening. It's good something to know. At the same time, it spurs a sense of adventure, and a sense of courage and bravery for you, and in you, to basically face your fears. And I'm sensing a lot of your fears, and our fears are about minutia, like things that actually don't really matter. And I love how you put it in perspective. Like, most of our decisions are not life and death, right?
Yeah.
They're not life and death. Uh, while at the mountain, you get a perspective that some decisions are, and that death might be closer than you think. So let's actually dive into this journey into ascending Mount Everest.
Hmm.
So I see a smile on your face.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
What
I
comes
love
up
to.
when you hear this? when you think about it?
Yeah, it's just it was such an amazing adventure, and I'm so grateful that I had the opportunity to do it, and that it went that I saw clearly that it went well. Made it to the summit. I came out of it with no physical damage. Um, but yeah, it is for me in reflection is that I started mountain climbing approximately at the same time that I think I just told me about the death of my father, and I really enjoyed it in my 20s. I did climbing in a lot in the Alps, like Switzerland, Italy, France, and it was I really it was yeah I love it. It was really for me a passion for a number of summers. And then in that time, there was the first Dutch climber that ever climbed Everest, Ronald Naar. You may recognize the name. And I went to a presentation of him in Amsterdam. I was one of the 300-400 people in the audience. And when I knew about Everest and I read about it, and it was always this thing that was so far away. And when I saw his presentation, Hylke, it was for me like flying to the moon. Yeah, I was in. Clearly, I was fascinated about his story, but I never ever had a second that I thought I would be capable of doing that. Like it was really for me like, yeah, if somebody would come to you and say, "Do you want to fly to the moon in 5 years?" It's like, well, yeah, you don't even know where to start. You don't know your first phone call. You have no idea where you would start a journey like that. And so I stopped mountain climbing, got a family, moved over to the US, and living in Seattle, and you are in Kirkland now. You look outside and you see Mount Rainier, which is a beautiful volcano in state Washington. It's around 14,000 feet, 4,300 meters. And that kind of awakens for me again, like, hey, I love to climb. Seems like a thing I should adventure. So I started to climb Rainier kind of as I wouldn't say yearly, but almost like a yearly thing. And so I climbed Rainier like 10 summers, 10 summits, different routes, really enjoyed it. Through my experience of climbing Rainier, and this was really coincidental, I met this female mountain climber, and her name is Melissa Arnaud. She climbed Everest 6 times. I started to help her with her charity, the Juniper Fund, and I started to learn from her around Everest. And then secondly, I also met this other mountain climber, Garrett Madison, who was I climbed Everest with Madison Mountaineering, and Garrett became a friend of mine. And through these people, I started to realize the path. And you realize that it's okay. Now I know my first phone call. I didn't know so I started to realize what it would take for me to ever do it. And then it kind of started to accelerate this process like 2-3 years ago. A really good friend of mine, Peter, he's trying to do 7 summits. He had Everest in his menu, and I really started to talk to him about it, and we decided to start training together for this experience. And we did Aconcagua in 2022. Aconcagua is the highest mountain in Americas, and it's the highest mountain outside the Himalaya. And that went. It was hard, but it went successful, and that kind of like set me on a path to say, okay, I'm not the youngest anymore. If I want to do this, I have bad hips that both needed surgery, so I need to push it through and start planning it for 23. It's for me, one of the takeaways, Hylke, is that, and you hear about the importance of mentorship and coaching for people that grow up in, say, less privileged environments. Mm-hmm. And this is kind of like a metaphor in the same way. It's like you cannot become what you can't see. And for me, the ability to meet people that have done it, and just gave for me just the practical knowledge and the I would say the the confidence, the self-confidence, the self-trust that, hey, if I do A, B, C, and a few other things, I have a chance to do this.
You cannot become what you cannot see. And also knowing what the first phone call is that I get to make. That's really resonating with me. So I want to explore more with you than literally your ascent towards the summit. Talk to us about it, and also talk to us about what you learned about yourself in that experience. Because most of us listening have never been there. And I would venture to say most of us will never go there. So you're introducing us to a world that's entirely yours for most people perspective. So tell us about what's that experience like? What was
Yeah.
your experience and what did you learn? Take us there.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack here. And so just to set a little bit like the context here, Hylke, is the climb itself is approximately 60 days. So 7-8 weeks. So 7-8 weeks in Nepal. The first 2 weeks is the hike to base camp, and that's where acclimatization starts. So Everest base camp is at 17,000 feet, and then you are starting to kind of like start the training and the acclimatization journey for your head, for your body, to get acclimatized enough that you can make it on the summit. And typically these are 3 rotations. So you do a rotation to camp 2, sleep a few nights there, go back to base camp. You make a rotation again. You try to hit camp 3, go back to base camp. Then you take a few days rest, and then you try to go all the way. So camp 1, camp 2, camp 3, camp 4, summit, and then back to base camp. So it's a lot of like going up and down the mountain and doing a lot of acclimatization hikes. Physically, to start with physically, and then I can talk maybe more about the psychological process or the mental processes. But physically, it really starts to be you start really feeling the pain of altitude when you hit base camp. And base camp has 50% of the oxygen that you have in Kirkland or in Tampa, and there's a reason that no humans live at that altitude on the planet. Like there's no cities or villages at that altitude, and as your body really starts deteriorating, and the lack of oxygen, it impacts your ability to digest food. You feel your brain. I always joke, but your cognitive power goes down. And I feel you lose like 30, 40 IQ points the moment you hit base camp or above. You feel lethargic, tired, always out of breath, and also your on a biological level, your ability to make new cells start changing, and so your body starts to prioritize some pivotal organs, but you in the weeks on base camp and your body mass, your muscle mass starts to slowly decrease. And so that is the physical aspect. The mental aspect is around and climbing is interesting because you have a lot of time. And like if you run a marathon, you kind of like 4 hours in the zone, and that's what you do, or 5 hours, or but hey, if you climb for 6 weeks, you have a lot of time by yourself in the tent or talking to other climbers, and so there's a lot of opportunity for reflection and thinking things through. And a couple of, for me, like key takeaways, and one was the importance of positive thinking, and you really have to be grounded in your ability to master the technical difficulties, and you really have to, because there are periods that you're sick, You have bad days, you have really bad days. Some days are hard, like you are on your feet going up the mountain for 16 hours and you're totally dehydrated. And so you have to always believe that you can do it. Because when you start, any self-doubt is just a spin, and a negative spin. And also, when you start hesitating or have self-doubt, then the more technical parts that could become very dangerous. And there were a lot of ladders that you had to cross. There were vertical walls that you had to climb, and so it's all not super hard. But the moment you start really thinking about the consequence, if you make a mistake, then things can become more dangerous. So you have to just really stay in the zone and stay positive. The second thing what was really interesting for me was the reflection around the journey versus the goal. And because when I started Everest in this whole adventure, clearly I wanted to go to the summit, and everybody, but a lot of people and all my family, they were all telling me, and I also believe that hey, it's really about the experience. You go to Nepal, you learn a new culture, you have the ability to be in maybe one of the most beautiful valleys in the world, the Kumbo Valley, where you see all those 8,000 meter peaks. You see Everest for the first time, and hey, you clearly want to reach the summit, but at the same time, you have to enjoy the days. Through the period, and the climb, I became more and more deterministic and passionate about, I want to get to the summit, whatever it takes. And it's the adversity you go through during the climb, and you to be able to take that day after day. You have to build this idea, the passion, this maybe kind of like this passion about hitting the summit is really, really important. And there were climbers around us that I think struggled with that, making the summit important enough, and they stopped. They stepped out because then why would you, after a few weeks, why would you keep taking this adversity on your body and these long days if you really don't care enough about the outcome?
Got it. Very beautiful. So we're going to take a short break in a moment. Been really enjoying my conversation with Erwin Visser, who is a mountaineer who recently also summited Mount Everest in 2023. Summited Mount Everest many times, Mount Rainier many times, Mount Everest once. And one of the things that I'm going to be curious about is how Erwin managed to stay in this zone in adversity, and why the summit has been so important to him. Like, what is that about, and what does that do in a person when we are very focused on something we want to achieve, while at the same time also enjoying our experience and enjoying the journey, and carpe diem, as Erwin was talking about earlier. So thank you so much, Erwin, for this conversation already, and for everybody who's listening. We'll be back after the break to explore more about how do we stay in the zone when adversity is with us pretty much all the time.
You are listening to Rooted and Unwavering, presented by Growth Leaders Network, the leadership, team, and culture development company. If you would like to learn more about working on connectedness for yourself, your team, or organization, please contact Growth Leaders Network on LinkedIn. And now, back to the show.
Welcome back to Rooted and Unwavering. I'm talking to Erwin Visser, who is a partner and general manager in Microsoft, and also a mountaineer. And one of the things that really struck me, Erwin, was what you just talked about as your body deteriorating, and you're not made to live at this altitude. And then this ongoing quest within yourself to stay in the zone. So tell us a bit more about the kinds of adversities, maybe get specific about it, the kinds of adversities that you experienced, maybe give some examples, and how you related to those adversities. What happened within you in those moments?
Yeah. No, I can be very and a, a few moments are still very clear to me. And one was that at the one adversity was the Kumbo icefall. And if you have seen pictures of Mount Everest climbs, you often see pictures of the Kumbo icefall, because that is it's very visual. It's like an glacier that is like falling apart, and the the a group of Sherpas called the Sherpa doctors built a route on that icefall. They have to update it almost every day. The Kumba icefall moves with like 3 feet a day, so it's really like a stream of like gigantic blocks of ice, and it's objectively the most dangerous part of climbing Everest, and you have to cross it 6 times, or at least 6 times, and a few weeks before us, and really tragically, 3 Sherpas died in that Kumbu icefall because a crevasse or a saras fell down, and so that was like shocking news for everybody, because it again shows that the people that know that icefall the best, the Sherpas doctors, even cannot don't have even a guarantee for their own safeties, and then take like an amateur climber like I am. So that was one where I tried to, because you go through it 6 times. You're approximately like going up, it's like 10 hours through that icefall, going down maybe 5-6 hours, and so you really have to block yourself out of any danger. Like you really cannot like look up and think, oh man, this ice could fall down on me every second. And the moment you decide to go through it, you have to then just trust that you're going to be lucky. That you have a certain level of luck that nothing is going to collapse while you're on it, and don't question your decision when you're on the icefall, because you have no choice at that moment than going up and down as fast as you can. The second one for me was, and it was like a weird moment. I woke up on, so Camp 2 is it's like 6,500 meters, so quickly translating 21,000 feet or so, 20,000 feet. I woke up one morning and my right eye was blind. So there's a pretty big shock when you're in a tent in the cold at that altitude. And so one of the guides told me that it sometimes happened because like an artery burst, or and it's like altitude. And so so I didn't panic, but clearly it concerns you. You don't want to lose your eyesight on a mountain. But lucky enough, like the day after, it started to become blurry, and like 2 days later, it was gone. And so the assessment of the guide was correct, that it was like altitude connected. But again, it shows you how vulnerable your body is at that altitude. Like you're really at a place where anything immediately escalates. Anything that goes wrong can escalate so quickly, and that is. Being aware of that, so you're not taking like crazy risks, because I really wanted to go home and see my family, but also not making that too big either, so that it stalls you from what you are trying to accomplish there. And so finding the balance between risk taking and staying like mentally solid and mentally healthy.
Yes. So I want to go into that moment with you for a moment, because I'm imagining I'm on 17,000 feet or 20,000 feet. I can't remember what you just said. Actually, I remember being there myself. That's the highest I ever went. I went to the Himalayas once myself, or twice myself, and that was the highest I ever went. And I remember, can imagine, like I remember waking up with heart palpitations, and I just couldn't. My heart was going boom, 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 boom. And I remember much younger than you than I'm now, sort of feeling a sense of panic, like what's going to happen. So tell us about what's that moment like? What was that moment like? You wake up and your eye doesn't work. It's blind.
Yeah.
Like, what was your first thought, and how did you deal with that?
Yeah, you first, you just try to assess is it because it's really weird to wake up and you cannot see through one eye, and so you try to assess the situation. You close your eyes again for like a few minutes in the hope that it disappears, and then you kind of like the realization sinks in, and then you try to get advice and settle yourself with that situation. And for me, the most important was like, hey, what happens if my other eye gets the same thing? Because then you have immediately like a dangerous situation clearly on a mountain like Everest. And so that was for me the biggest. So the moment that I start seeing improvement on the first day, I felt much better, because I thought like, okay, there's progression and things, and this is where you have to be positive again, like the positive thinking that your eye will recover and your body will recover, and that things will be good in 2-3 days from now. That's the only thought you can almost keep in your mind. It's like you cannot anticipate risks. You can just deal with them when they're there.
Yes. So where did you find the wherewithal to stay positive? Because I can imagine all kinds of forces pulling at you at that moment.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I've always been a person that is I learned it, I think, and maybe part was in my personality, is that I can really stay focused on the things that are in my control. So I think the biggest learning, and I learned again it on Everest, but I think it was something that I built early in life, is just the fact that you can spend so much time thinking about things you don't control. And so really keeping your focus as a human, and this is like a statement on work, family, life, and like focus on the things you can control and the decisions you have to make today, or the actions you can take today. And anything that is beyond that is not something you should spend too much cycles on, because again, it's outside your control.
Great. So you focused on that, and then the eyesight started to slowly come back, and then you continued.
Yeah.
And was it a smooth walk up from there?
Well, we had to go down. So 2 days later, we had to go back from Camp 2 to, if I remember correctly, to base camp. And my eyes were working my right eye was working like 95% at that time, or 90%. So maybe a little bit blurry, but good enough. And it never came back. So it was a one-time experience that put you a little bit out of balance. But at the end, it was like not a big event for the climb.
I see that. I'm reflecting on when we have those moments. Those are really moments of truth, you could say. Like, what am I really committing to? What am I really committed to? And what I'm hearing you say is, I'm really committed to focusing on what I can control.
Yeah, and I also think, Hylke, this is where and for me, it was something that I also start to think about in my personal life and business, is like this thing between like, I said that, I mentioned earlier that when my father died, for me, carpe diem, like enjoy every day, was such an important thing. But at the same time, you want to set goals in your life that you want to achieve. And these goals sometimes require that not every day is enjoyable. And so you really have to, and it can be a personal statement, business statement, family. Like, I think we all have to like have periods in our lives where we just need to push through. And it's not really that we enjoy it that much, but we know it's part of our accountability of the goal that we want to achieve. And I think that while I felt that I had a pretty good balance going into Everest, I saw my balance change. And I think that is also a reason for why are so many like accidents, like deadly accidents on Everest, is that people get like overly focused on the goal and lose just the balance of the situation, and start taking risks that are like, if you take a step back, you would say it's totally stupid. but yeah, people just this year was the deadly season on Everest. 17 casualties in the climbing season. Very unfortunately, one of those casualties was somebody in our team, which was like a traumatic experience to me and my teammates. As somebody that you closely connect with over 7-8 weeks, and then got like high altitude disease in Camp 4 and was not able to make it down. And it just shows the danger. And again, you can translate that maybe in a different way to personal life. It's like, sometimes you need to be overly focused, but overly focused can also mean that you lose track of other things in your life that are more important. And in this case, on Everest, it's super easy. It's like, what is more important than life? Like, you can never balance climbing a summit versus staying alive. But people start making really bad decision making in that balance because of their focus on that one single thing.
So that's an over focus, an over attachment to some goal that literally kills people on the mountain. And of course, there's also factors outside of people's control, like falling piece of ice and rock, that can do the same thing.
Yes,
that's true. The thing I'm very curious about is the goal, your goal. So why was summiting the summit so important to you? What did it mean to you?
Yeah, it's the most obvious question and the hardest question to answer. And I've tried to answer it in my head, and I think I come down to a few things for me. And one is that, and let me start with maybe the less purposeful one, or whatever you want to call it, is that there was probably a part of me that felt the need to prove myself, and maybe move some uncertainty out of my system. It's the like feeling, and I think like everybody, I struggle with uncertainty. I think a lot of people, and so there was part of me that just wanted to prove to myself that I could do something like this, and get myself in the mindset for the challenge. I think part of it is that I really enjoy this feeling of dedicating yourself to a challenging goal. And there is like beauty in the fact that you spend because it's not just the 6 weeks or the 8 weeks on Everest, but it's also the 9 months in advance that you have this goal in your head around, hey, I'm training like 12 to 16 hours every week to be ready on March to do this thing. And there's like a little, like, there's beauty in having that focus and that single-minded focus, because it just gives you purpose, like a very strong feeling of purpose in that period. There's the other thing is that I don't know, I cannot exactly explain it, but I always had the feeling in my life that I needed to do hard things. That I wanted to push myself, and I think that part of it maybe is because I really have a pet peeve against entitlement, and I sometimes I hear myself talk and I hate myself. And like sitting in a restaurant and you get like a great steak, and then you think it's you ask for medium, and it's kind of medium well done, and it kind of like you have this moment that you kind of get disappointed, and you really have to push yourself back and say, hey, I'm probably 0.001% of the world population that's eating a steak tonight. And so like this should not change my mood for this night, or even not for like 30 seconds. And so I think there's a mountain climbing is such a great thing to kick that entitlement back. Like it's you sleep in a tent, you sleep in the same clothes for 8 weeks, you eat bad food. Well, it's not too bad, but it was no, it's not great either. You yeah, you have no showers or very limited showers. There's no TV. You're cold. You're sleeping with a down jacket every night. So it was funny because um, when I came from the mountain, we were looking for a hotel in Kathmandu, and then one or two people texted me about what is the best hotel. And it's so interesting is that, like, yeah, I couldn't care less. And I know these people texted me in love, but it really doesn't matter if it's like a 4-star or 5-star hotel or 3-star hotel when you spend 8 weeks on the mountain. You don't really care about it. And so it really helps me doing these things. I feel to keep myself and my personality in control and make sure that I focus myself and I enjoy like what I have and don't get overly focused on like details that are not really important in life.
So in a way, summiting Mount Everest was also reaching a summit in yourself, that you learn to basically let go of a lot of pieces of you that no longer are serving, and you actually no longer need and no longer want. And you gained a sense of confidence and a sense of dignity, is what I'm sensing within yourself. Like, yes, and what's important to me, and it helped to create some distance between you and the things that the conventional mind might think are important, like the steak or the 5-star hotel or whatever it is. But like, let's just so a mountain like that pulls us into debate to the essentials, like what is life really about, stripped down to its bare bones. And that's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, it helped, I think, and I'm totally honest now. I think it helped me fill the gap between who I am and who I want to be.
And what did you discover as you filled that gap?
Yeah. So it puts me closer to the person I'm aspiring to be versus the person I feel I'm sometimes am.
And how did that happen? Tell us more about that. How did that gap get closed in you?
And it's by proving to myself I'm capable of doing this, and get myself through this process. And and I by the way, I don't want to take away that climbing Mount Everest is also a beautiful experience. Like I don't want to get it's everything in life is balance. This is also balance. So it is it's a unique experience. So it's not just trying to take away. It's not just trying to fill a gap. It's also a unique experience that I'm grateful for and I will always carry with me. But I think part of that was like, hey, I aspire to be somebody, and I aspire to be a person that embraces values and lives based on values. And one of those values is courage. And so I want to make sure and stay on that, like hit the threshold for myself. Like, what does it mean and what is my personal meaning behind courage, and how do I stay on that path?
Yes. So Everest taught you a lot about courage, and the courage that you have that courage, that you are that courage, and it helped you to connect to the courage that you are, you could say. I'm tying it back to the way we started this conversation. There's a certain level of grit that I also heard in your dad's story, being willing to dedicate himself to something, even though that might not have been an easy experience for him. Sounds like Everest was a really beautiful experience for you, and at the same time a really challenging one that has taught you, and it keeps teaching you a lot. I'm sensing this is an experience, even though you're off the summit now and now in Tampa, Florida. Mount Everest is always with you. So maybe as we start wrapping up this conversation, what are some of the lessons from Everest that you're taking with you, probably for the rest of your life, that you might want to maybe want to share with us, for those of us who've not been there but
Yeah,
are interested?
yeah. I think maybe the most important one, and potentially also the obvious, is that it's going back to growth mindset. Is that you are capable of doing things that you never dreamed of being capable of. And if somebody would have asked me even 10 years ago, like, do you want to climb Mount Everest? I would probably have laughed them in their face, because I would have never thought that I would be able to, that I was capable of doing it. And hey, I'm not and this was maybe the fourth part of the motivation. I think I shared three, is that I also wanted to be I also wanted to wow.
It's okay. It's okay. It's okay.
Here we go. Hey, I also wanted to be a role model for my kids.
Yes. Thank you for sharing that. Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
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 We'll put myself together.
You are together.
This is live. You cannot cut it out. But now the thing is that, hey, I'm not the most evident person to climb Everest. Like, I have climbing experience and I'm relatively healthy, but I also had cancer twice. I have like intestines issues that are incurable, and I need prescription medicines for that. My hips now need surgery in both sides because they were completely wear and tear, and I need injections for that. And I went through a lot of pain in the training for that. So it's not that it's like, hey, it was super evident that this would be a successful adventure, and with some of the baggage I took at the start of this. But I also think that I said it, and showing my kids that this is possible, and so that they take the same, hopefully, growth mindset view in their lives.
What a beautiful, beautiful legacy to leave, and that you can live to do it. You get to live to see the impact and to be that. And thank you for sharing, all of you, including your tears. To me, it sounds like, and I can feel it. It touches something very deeply in you and probably in all of us. Considering what we are capable of as human beings is a deeply, deeply moving experience. And what I'm relating to is there's the tears of joy of the possibility, and the tears of grief of maybe the times that we are not living up to that and giving into that. And so there's a sense of feeling really moved from many, many different areas. It's almost like when we are beholding something very, very beautiful and we're just in awe and everything explodes. So thank you for sharing that with us, Erwin. Anything else you'd like to say by way of closing? This conversation is already to an end. I could spend 60 days with you. I know it takes many days to get.
No, it is. I said that. Oh, sorry, Hylke.
You go ahead. Anything else you want to say?
No, I really enjoyed this. What I loved about this conversation, Hylke, is that it makes things also more clear to me. So I learn a lot myself. While I learn from you, I learn from the conversation. So thank you for this opportunity. Really appreciate it.
You are very welcome. It's been a deep honor to sit with you, Erwin, as a fellow human being, as a mountaineer, as a role model for all of us for courage of what's possible when we truly are digging into our potential and taking a stand for the summit of the potential within ourselves, which to me, Mount Everest is a visual reminder for that we get to climb to teach us about what we're capable of. And that is my closing thinking about today. It's like, what are we capable of? And what would happen if we took a stand for it in a very deliberate ways, in good days and in bad days? What's that like when we take a stand for what we're truly capable of? And that to me is a question that invites us into a journey and not necessarily a static answer that we write in a post-it note. It's something that can guide us. So thank you so much, Erwin. And thank you for everyone who's been listening. We've been talking with Erwin Visser, a partner and a leader, senior leader in Microsoft, and also a mountaineer who recently was on the top of Mount Everest. We've been doing this podcast of Rooted and Unwavering today. If you like this podcast or want to hear more of these conversations, you can subscribe to this podcast everywhere where you download your podcast, or subscribe to podcasts at Apple and Spotify and all these other names that I don't even remember all the time. And you also can follow us on LinkedIn and find replays that for Growth Leaders Network and other places. We'll be here again in the middle of October with another senior leader from Microsoft, ex-leader, former leader, and she's now a CEO who recently sold her company. And I'm looking forward to that conversation as well, talking about what it's like to be truly committed to our potential. You've been listening to Rooted and Unwavering, and where we help connect leaders more deeply to their innate potential. I'm your host, Hylke Faber. See you next time.
Thank you for joining us in today's episode of Rooted and Unwavering, leadership conversations about courageous connectedness, presented by the leadership development company, Growth Leaders Network. To learn more, subscribe to this podcast, connect with Growth Leaders Network and Hylke Faber on LinkedIn, or read Hylke's award-winning book, Taming Your Crocodiles. Now take a moment and appreciate something that is great about you. Celebrate the gift that you are and enjoy connecting more deeply to your best self today. See you next time on Rooted and Unwavering.